Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich. Today's video is a bit of a piggyback on what I talked about yesterday. The video yesterday was talking about how you might need to simply change your approach to how you look at the release of all of this new content. Instead of tossing it aside and thinking, this is clearly not for me and I have no use for this and I'm not able to bring this to my game. You notice how I kept mentioning in that video how I approach every new release, every new piece of content with a breath of fresh air. Because I expect to find some nugget of wisdom, some bit of inspiration within that content. Even if it's a new world and I have no plans of running that world or changing my campaign. If it's a new monster book that has monsters that are typically found in the Feywild or the Shadowfell, but I'm not running anything in the Feywild or Shadowfell. Instead of simply saying, this book's not for me, look at the content that's released. Now, if you've got limited budget, yes, certainly pick and choose and spend your money wisely on the things that you think you're going to get the most value out of, but really just change your approach, right? And I mentioned that yesterday. So what I want to do today is I want to show 3 examples that I made up very quickly. I put these together, all 3 in total, in about 30 to 40 minutes. So it shows you that if you just invest a good weekend on a piece of content, on a newly released book, that you might have at first, up front, said, there's nothing of value there for me. There's nothing in that that's going to apply to my table, to my game, to my group. This book sucks. If you spend a good weekend with it and change your approach to how you digest that material, let me show you how you can come up with something. So I just pulled 3 random pieces of content. The first one is Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Now, I do believe this is a really good piece of content. If you're going to run something in this little bit darker, more macabre horror base, it's right here for you. I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. Use what's here. But what I did to illustrate this example is I just moused over. Being that I haven't used this, I haven't really looked at it at all. So I just moused over Har Arkir. And I scrolled down and I thought, I mean, how easily can you just gloss over this if you're not going to use it? I don't want to use the Domains of Dread. I don't want to use this book at all. But everything I have, when I'm in sort of inspiring imagination research mode, I just sit and browse through whatever. Okay? So I just found this Har Arkir. Here's a map. In this particular case, the example I'm going to show you is I just made, or I took this map right here. Here's the player version. Okay? Now, yes, I do have design chops and Photoshop skills. So what I did is, if I was to open this up for you very quickly, check this out. So, real quick, here's the original, right? The player version, because there's no labels. If you were to look at the DM version, it's this one. All of these locations. Sure, you can rename them and use these locations as you will, but I'm not using the content here. I'm just using the map, nothing else. So I took the player version, because it has no labels on it really. I got rid of this in Photoshop, and this is what I came up with. I've called it the Worm Lost Desert. I left all the border details and the design and all that good stuff. I left the compass. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. You see, but when I do something like this, and this took me 8-10 minutes in Photoshop, possibly because that length of time, because I was noodling it, you know, and I'm a stickler for making sure I have the right font. So if you're just going to quickly label this or print this out and then write over it with a pen, you can get it done even faster. I don't know what these things mean. But the Worm Lost Desert, it started to get the wheels turning for me. And it got me thinking, there's worms. It's an ancient sort of burial ground. Now, are we talking about like Dune type of worm? WYRM? Are we talking like the great worms from 3.5, 3.0? Like ancient dragons? What worms are we talking about? But there's something here. And I named 4 of them. Broncata, Givrak, Raskathul, and Drusk. I don't know where I'm going to go with that. I have nothing else beyond this. There's a Fort Bugwhisk. Maybe that's sort of an NPC place for the PCs, kind of a place where they might find some level of hospitality. Kind of their staging point, if you will, where they can get some long rests as they venture out into this area. It's still keeping the same scale. To the Godlands. What the hell are the Godlands? I don't know. I just wrote that. And there's beauty in just typing something out and then figuring out what it sounds like and then piecing together mechanics and gameplay from that. The Chasm of Swords. I don't know. It looked like chasms to me. Drusk, Roskathul, Givrak, and Bronkata. That's it. So I had no intention of using Ravenloft. But being that I have the book, instead of just kind of, I don't want that book, there's no value in it for me, I'm not going to get anything from it, I'm not going to play in the Domains of Dread, you never know what you're going to find. I have an entire night of gameplay that I can pull from that map I made up right there. Because it gets the wheels turning, and that's what you want as a dungeon master. If you get the wheels turning, and you build up these levels of skills, and this database, if you will, of things you can pull from, even outside of the D&D space, movies, comic books, toys, video games, whatever, you'll piece together content, adventure. So that's just an example, a random choice in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft of one place. Obviously, I can keep scrolling and find pictures and more maps and so on, okay? The second one that I want to show you is Netherdeep, right here. Call of Netherdeep, whatever you want to call it, I think. Let's see where I got this guy from. Okay, here we go. The second one I want to show you is, again, randomly just kind of said, hey, I've never really looked at Dragon of Icespire Peak. Icespire Peak. I don't know what this is. I mean, I know what it is. It's an introductory adventure to get new players kind of ushered into the game. But I decided to go and click on creatures. And as I scrolled down, I thought, well, there's one. The Anchorite of Talos. Now, this one's pretty simple. I simply took this piece of art, saved it as an image, right? Brought it into Photoshop. That's it. This piece of art. I understand he already has a stat block. He, she, I think it's a he, already has a stat block in here, right? So it's already a creature. But it's anchored to this sort of content, right? The Dragon of Icespire Peak. I made it a little more generic. I just was simply sparked by the artwork. Looks very barbaric, right? Pit fightery, gladiatorial, blood, berserker. So I took this artwork, and what I put together is this. This little NPC monster stat card. See this whole thing here, armor class, hit points, this whole stat block? What I did is I went back into D&D Beyond, I went under monsters, I typed in orc, and I think I used the Fiendish Orc from Critical Role's Call of the Netherdeep. There's no artwork associated with it. I took this entire stat block and Corv Gutrend. Right there. As a bonus action, Corv can move up to his speed towards a hostile creature. Grumpsh's Fury. Corv deals an extra 1d8, blah, blah, blah. Corv makes 2 attacks. Right? I just sort of replaced the instances where it said the orc can, and I gave it a little more personality, right? I attached it and gave it a little more uniqueness. Who's Corv Gutrend? I don't know, but with 93 hit points as an orc, he might be a chieftain. So I've taken something that was already in a stat block, but I pulled it out, and I decided to use this as some sort of NPC. This guy can become an iconic villain in one of my games, in any world. So instead of thinking, I have no use for the dragon or dragons of Icespire Peak, pull out things and make it sort of world-free, agnostic, right? And just, I think that's the word, and attach it to whatever you want to attach it to. There you go, okay? The last example, Strixhaven Rewrite. Check this one out. Strixhaven, Curriculum of Chaos. If we took a look at A Reckoning in the Ruins. Right here, A Reckoning in the Ruins. We scroll down. sinister shadow. Now, I'm not using Strixhaven at all. I have no plan to. But, as an example, I just found a little snippet of all of this right here. And I use the read this to your players bits to spark and change and edit and write in my own things and make some name changes. But it now gives me fuel that I can run with, right? So here's what it looks like. It's a PDF. Here's the original. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. As written in Strixhaven. This is word for word, just copied and pasted right here. From a sinister shadow and a brief distraction to there. Okay? Here's my PDF file. A sinister shadow. Once the characters have cemented their 4th year extracurricular, jobs, and relationships decisions as needed, it's time to kick off this adventure. When the characters arrive for their final year at Strixhaven, the mood is muted. Social spaces are sparsely populated, students chat in whispered tones, and the campus's energy is tense. Read or paraphrase the following. All of your hard work has come down to this, your 4th and final year as a student of magic at Strixhaven University. But as soon as you arrive on campus, it's clear that something is very wrong. Instead of the usual cheerful bustle, students mill about campus nervously. Here and there, you hear frightened whispers. I heard his name is Morgaxor. I heard he wants to hurt us all. The rumor mill has apparently discovered the grave events that happened last academic term. At this point, the characters might be waiting on the faculty to discover more about Morgaxor's plans. However, they might also want to take this investigation into their own hands. If they do, run the clue in the bayou section, blah, blah, blah. A brief distraction, and so on. But notice, right? I'm going to leave it here. Read that. That's as written in Strixhaven. It's very specific. If you're not running Strixhaven, you might think, what does that paragraph and all of this reading to my players, how would I read that to my players if I'm not, where does that come from? What's the context? The mood on campus might be gloomy, but as you cross the central campus, you see a few of your classmates smiling and gesturing outside Fire Jolt Cafe. A familiar face jogs up to you, waving and smiling in relief. It's good to see you! Things have been dire around here lately. But some friends are inside about to start playing a game they call Scuffle Cup. Apparently, they found a box of animated teacups, and they figured out how to control the little buggers. Come on, let's go check it out. Here's what I did. I made it up. This is called a sinister shadow and a brief distraction. Again, copy and pasted as written right here in Strixhaven. My version is called Stung on the Streets. And you're going to notice some consistencies. The stuff that didn't feel like it was specific, the wording that wasn't specifically attached to Strixhaven, I left that. And then I just interjected and put in my own words and my own little bits. But by reading that, it got my wheels turning that I was able to, without reading that and without having that as sort of a foundation, I don't know if I would have thought of this little blurb to read to my players so quickly. Once the characters have cemented their status among the Windwalk Druids, it's time to kick off this adventure. When the characters arrive for their final task at Bluegill Sound, the mood is muted. Social spaces are sparsely populated, residents chat in whispered tones, and the energy on the streets is tense. Read the following. All of your hard work has come down to this, your final task before you. But as soon as you arrive in Bluegill Sound, it's clear that something is very wrong. What's the original one? All of your hard work has come down to this, your 4th and final year as a student of magic at Strixhaven. It's clear something's wrong. Instead of the usual cheerful bustle, students mill about the campus nervously. Here and there you hear frightened whispers. I heard his name is Morgaxor. He wants to hurt us all. The rumor mill has apparently discovered the grave events that happened last academic term, right? Mine says, instead of the usual cheerful bustle, the town guard mill about the streets nervously. Here and there you hear frightened whispers. I heard her name, at least what they call her. Mother of Wasps. I heard she wants to hurt us all. The rumor mill has apparently discovered the grave events that happened no more than 3 nights ago. See, but that last few words in that last sentence, it gets me kind of spinning the wheels on, now I need to chart out like a little flow chart of 3 nights ago, 2 nights ago, last night, and then today. It informs something. But again, That only came from, that spark began when I read something from Strixhaven. At this point, the characters might be waiting on the Windwalk Druids to discover more about the Mother of Wasp's plans. However, they might also want to take this investigation into their own hands. If they do, run the Stomping Insects. Here you had to run the Clue in the Bayou. But now I need to make up something to refer to when I talk about Stomping Insects. A dire warning. While the characters wait to learn more about the Mother of Wasps, they discover a rival adventuring group engaged in a game at the Black Run Tavern. The original one says, while they're waiting to learn more about Murgaxer, they discover some of their fellow students engaged in a game on the central campus. Mine says one of the characters' friends or rivals is part of the scene, identical, or you may choose another NPC from the Bluegill Sound NPCs section. I now have something to create. When you're ready to begin, read the following. Let's look at the original. The mood on campus might be gloomy, but as you cross the central campus, you see a few of your classmates smiling and gesturing outside the Fire Jolt Cafe. A familiar face jogs up to you, waving and smiling. It's good to see you. Things have been dire around here lately, but some friends are inside about to start playing a game they call Scuffle Cup. Apparently they found blah blah blah, they figured out how to control the little buggers. Come on, let's go. Mine says, the mood around town might be gloomy, but as you cross the central square, you see 3 of the rival adventurers smiling and gesturing outside the Black Run Tavern. I now need to create the Black Run Tavern. Start looking up some information on what kind of food they might serve. What's the rumors that are spread throughout that tavern? You know all 3 of those rival adventurers as you bloodied the nose of the one closest to you. With an outstretched hand, the female paladin waves you over. Notice how much we have now to launch off of to create. A female paladin NPC, what was the reason for the fight? How do they know these adventurers? And so on. A familiar face greets you, waving and smiling in relief. A facade, as your previous encounter resulted in subdual combat. It's so good to see you. The exact same thing. See, but then I put this little snippet where there wasn't anything here. The PCs aren't sure what the rival group's play is, but last night's rumors lumped the rivals in with the stories surrounding the Mother of Wasps. They're up to something, and it's best to check it out. The group might even win a bit of coin in the process, so it would behoove them to play that game of Scuffle Cup with the people they had a fist fight with yesterday. That's it. 3 of those I came up with. Yes, I'm savvy in the Adobe Creative Suite, so I laid out 2 of them in Photoshop, and this one I created in Adobe InDesign and just copy and pasted some text and rewrote some stuff. But again, through reading this, it just said, well, I'm not applying the Fire Jolt Cafe, and I don't want to do anything with school and students. I've got to change the wording. And then it helped me formulate some sentences. But I have some content that I can run with. Change how you approach this stuff, folks. Work on your skills. Rely on that creativity and imagination. And I assure you, the content that you previously thought was dead in the water is quite valuable. I'll see you guys later.